Are you an ambitious leader ready to break through limiting beliefs, align with your purpose, and thrive in your career without sacrificing your well-being or postponing your true desires? I'm Diana Ordonez, certified high-performance coach and your host. Each week, we'll dive into actionable insights and research-based strategies to help you unlock clarity, build unshakable confidence, and take courageous action toward a life of impact and fulfillment. If you're ready to overcome fear, embrace growth, and step boldly into your next level, you're in the right place. Let's create a life filled with courage and purpose together. Welcome back, everybody, to the Courage and Purpose podcast. I am joined here today by Sean Butner, who is a certified high-performance coach and the host of Creators That Crush, the podcast for creators who want to crush it. I am so excited to have you here today. I know that we connected over in our monthly certified high performance coaching call, and I found so much of your story that resonated with me, coming from a tech background, coming into a completely new identity as a coach, and especially you coming from an engineering background and then turning into more of a project manager and then moving into that coaching role, facing burnout and all of that. So why don't you tell us a little bit about your background so people can get a sense of some of the ways that those shifts were impactful for you as identity shifts?
Right on. So first off, thank you for having me on the show. I'm really excited to be here. Getting into a little bit of these identity shifts, as you phrased it. I grew up with a fascination with computers, right? So it's kind of self-taught in programming, took a couple things in high school, went to college not knowing what I was going to do. And so I'm like, I'll need business skills. That's a pretty safe one that'll help me go anywhere I want to go. Did the business school thing, and then got my first job as a web programmer for Walmart. But the first kind of weird shift is I had this passion, kind of put it on the back burner, learned about a completely different thing, and then decided to just do something completely different again. So going into software without having a computer science degree was really intimidating. And so it's my first true taste of imposter syndrome, of wanting to add value so much, wanting to prove myself in a way that was not healthy and led to burnout. So burnt out, saying yes to everything and really trying to be helpful, but was able to bring some of those skills that were maybe unrelated to computer science to my job. Ended up being in the sweet spot of the communicator between business people and engineers, which was really good for all of my experiences up to that point. By the time I had figured that out, I had so much burnout that I decided to leave Walmart to start a business helping people student debt. So that brought me to California. That business failed, but it allowed me to get a job at Apple as a software engineer again. So back to being a software engineer, kind of out of my depth. But what was really cool about Apple is they tried to recruit people at a different perspective. So it wasn't all people with computer science degrees. There's a philosophy major on my team, the arts humanity all together, which was really good. So I had the experience before, so I felt much less of an imposter there. It felt really positive. It was like a dream job. And so I'm thinking, hey, I want to maybe lead an engineering team. And I've had some managers that were really brilliant engineers and really terrible people managers. It's one of those skill shifts that if you're not studying how to lead a team and how to communicate and all the interpersonal stuff, you are doing yourself and your team a disservice. So I'm like, you know what? I'm going to get some extra credentials as a coach, and that'll give me a base set of skills that I think will be really helpful in managing a team. At that time, high performance coaching certification came around from mutual mentor, Brendan Bouchard. And so I signed up for that in 2015, did the training week, got a couple of beta clients. And I just remember each session, I'm like, this is what I want to do when I grow up. The passion was there. So the next 4 years after that, I was slowly plotting my way to do coaching full time. Because Apple was such a dream job, if you've ever had that experience, you set a big goal, accomplish it, you're living a great life, doing something you love, and then you find something better. How do you manage that? And for me, it was when I stopped wanting to learn about technology, which had been a constant thing my whole life up until that point. That was the signal that I should change. And so in 2018, jumped full into a full-time coach and managed COVID and all that. And here we are today.
I love so much of your story because I'm sure so many people that listen to the podcast have gone through these moments of, I love this thing. I love doing it. This is what I want to be when I grow up. Or, this no longer resonates and this keeps calling me in this direction. I think that's how I felt when I started to burn out. Like you, I found for a long time, I was able to kind of mix my two interests of technology, where I had started my degree program as a comp sci major and then eventually graduated with psych major. And there's such different interests to then find that sweet spot as a product manager and be able to use both those skill sets as someone that didn't have a business degree, also didn't have the engineering degree. I had that similar feeling that I was an imposter. And it was like thinking that I was going to do something more in the counseling psychology realm when I graduated, then organically growing into a product management role. I think in all these different career transitions, that moment where you have to take that leap of faith, belief that you'll be able to figure it out, saying, you know what, I'm going to go for it. And lucky for me, I had a really great mentor that kind of took me in that direction to product management, where he said, what do you want? And let's build a plan to get there. But I did not have that later when I had experienced burnout. I knew I wanted to do something different, but I wasn't sure what it was. I was lacking clarity. I was lacking confidence. And so I had situations where I was like, okay, what I really need is a coach, because I need that person that gives me more clarity on the direction of how to get to where I ultimately want to be. What was it for you that helped you make those leaps into the unknown, into, hey, I really love this computer thing. Let me learn more and more. And now let me leap into a career path that is not common, I guess, for a self-taught engineer. Maybe it's more common than people think. I think a lot of times, anytime I think that it's unconventional path, people have a lot of self-doubt and reasons why it won't work out or they're not qualified enough. What was it that helped you make that leap into, I'm going to do this even though it seems like I might be an imposter?
I think there's a couple of mindsets. I've always been fortunate to be able to figure my way through things. So a lot of the engineering stuff was just brute force, sitting in front, trying to code and going from not knowing how to debug code to like, this is an essential skill that I need in order to be successful. I think also having some good mentors. One of the best pieces of advice I got in those early years as a professional software engineer was, it's okay to make mistakes, but it's not okay if you're making the same mistake over and over. So that was my first manager, Max. It was an amazing piece of advice that I still think about today because we're always learning. I also think being curious about the world and wanting to learn has always been a motivating force. Every time before Walmart and Apple, I stopped learning about what I was doing there and started to think, well, my full heart isn't in this. If I'm daydreaming about doing coaching when I'm supposed to be coding, maybe that's a sign from the universe or a sign of self-awareness that this is a thread to explore some more. And, I gave you the broad strokes of how I went from not really knowing engineering to coaching. There's so many stories of hemming and hawing about, is this the right thing for me? Or once you start to make a decision, like the fetal position in the bedroom, rocking back and forth, being like, what have I done with my life? So there's ups and downs, but I also feel that those moments where I chose my destiny, where I'm like, okay, I'm going to go full in on this. I can figure it out eventually. And I'll just have to kind of, maybe that's the leap of faith of this will work out somehow, maybe not the exact way that I want, but I'll land on my feet somehow. You know, that's what life is like, having burnt out in corporate America and feeling like you're doing the same thing over and over again and things aren't changing. When you make those big choices for yourself, your whole life's up, or at least it did
Yeah.
for me. And you're proud. I'm like, I'm living my life. This could be the worst mistake ever, but I'm at the helm of who I am and where I'm going. The identity of being the captain of your own ship. When I was the most burnt out, I felt like a ship without a captain. So I
Right.
was taking control of the ship again in order
Yeah.
to really live life.
Something that you said reminded me of a pivotal moment in my like career was realizing, oh, all this time the one that was steering my ship was
Mm,
fear. What's really in control is not me, even though it feels like it's me. It's
mm,
because fear is actually the one controlling everything I'm deciding because I feel like I need to be in control of everything. Like that's actually the signal. Like,
mm,
oh, when I feel like I have to be in control of everything, I'm actually experiencing enormous amounts of fear. Like if I
mhm,
have to make sure that everything goes exactly like I was planning it to, it's because I'm so scared. One time I met this woman that said something to me that stayed with me forever. And she said that she got it from the book. I think it was from the originals, maybe. But the quote, she had it tattooed on her arm actually.
Oh,
It
cool.
was curiosity over fear. And
Mhm,
for me, it was like I asked her, how did you have the courage to pursue that business? Because she had a business that was like a coffee shop, but she roasted her own beans and all this stuff. But she came from a completely different background. She had no
mhm,
experience. She had no idea what she was doing. Right. And I was like, oh, I can resonate with that, wanting to do something completely different and not knowing anything
mhm.
about it and feeling like, oh, I have to be so courageous. How were you so courageous? And it was like, I stopped looking at it like I have to be courageous. And I started just pursuing my curiosity. When you were talking, I made that connection too is like, sometimes it's just about knowing that you want to know more, that it's
Mhm.
interesting, that it's calling to you. And sometimes when courage doesn't feel accessible, I lean on that. Let me just follow that curiosity and continue to get curious instead of asking myself, what if it's going to fail? It's like, well, I wonder what would happen if I tried this, or I wonder what would happen if I went to this event or read this
Mhm.
book or talked to this person, using those as small steps to keep exploring it further as opposed to looking at it as a huge leap into courage. Sometimes it
Mhm.
feels like you're gaining enough confidence and self esteem through those steps that you ultimately do end up encouraged without necessarily realizing, right?
I actually think that courage is something that you see looking back, right?
Mm,
Every choice that I've made has been scary and the fear has sat with me. What made it a courageous moment in my life was the fact that I continued to act with it by my side. And I was most successful when I did try to shut it down. Somebody was like, okay, you're
mm,
there. And you're telling me some important things that I probably should pay attention to. So I'm going to note that. I'm going to have a contingency plan for that. And we're going to move forward.
yeah.
And, this, and it comes back to like, so I'm a card carrying introvert and I talk about this a lot. A pivotal moment of courage for me that has played out over and over again as I've made big career choices was in senior year of high school. My friend Sarah is like, hey, I'm running a like after school coffee club and we need people to perform poems or music or something. And I've been playing guitar for 3 months and we connected on that. And she's like, hey, would you play some songs? I said, I don't know. Let me think about it. I knew that I was going to college and I had a core group of friends and they were all going to a different school. So I'm like, I'm going out into the world by myself. And I'm like, I need to do this to prove to myself that I can get in front of people and talk or do whatever and not die. It really felt like life or death. And so I had 15 minutes of music planned, 3 months of guitar lessons. I could barely sing and hold a tune. I remember the humidity in the auditorium and that smell of the theater where it's like wood and paint and God knows what. And so I remember panicking, like sitting offside the stage with my guitar and like I'm gonna go up there, call my name, plug in and play. And you go on and the lights are blinding. You can't really see the audience, which is really good. I remember it being like pin drop quiet. I plug in the guitar and like freeze. What feels like forever. I'm just like, I need to do something. I remember playing the first chords of the song wrong. I completely biffed it and started singing weird. And then I kept persistent. I'm like, I want to run away and throw up, but I can't do this. And I somehow got on the stage. So I start to see people like swaying in the front, like these shapeless people, with the lights. And I'm like, oh, these people want me to succeed. And it helped me relax. It taught me that most people around you want you to succeed and are on your side, right? There's certain times where you get heckles and stuff, but most people are good and want you to succeed. I think that foundational belief has helped me show up courageously when I decided like, hey, you know what? I'm going to be a software engineer. I don't know what I'm doing. I passed the test and they said they wanted me. So awesome. Or I'm going to get out of tech altogether and learn how to be a coach, which means I'm also a content creator and I'm great at setting up systems. I'm terrible at communicating ideas. Moments like that, I wanted to puke. I wanted to run. I think there might have been a time where I wanted to actually fight the audience. I was full fight or flight. But looking back, it's one of the most courageous moments because I didn't let that stop me, you know? And so where are the moments in your life where you have that fear, but you're not going to let it stop you? And basic, I feel like there's always something great in those moments. And maybe you have a moment.
I know for me, also an introvert, I had similar experiences. So I'll talk about the before and then a different scenario where it was totally a different experience for me. I had to give a presentation in front of like major CEOs of the major beauty companies and pharmaceutical companies in that industry to talk about the importance of technology in a world that was changing, where we were now using terms like e-commerce and full omni-channel experience at home, in the aisles and online. It was like that world was shifting, and we had such a presence in the medical field that the pressure was on to be the expert talking about why these tools are so important and talking to people I felt were higher level than me. But more importantly, I had been doing that kind of all along. It was the massive audience in front of me. It was so different to move from a boardroom where I was the vendor invited in to talk about these things versus like a whole room of who I felt knew their businesses really well and were going to be in, like you said, critical, right? As opposed to they're just there to learn something. But same feelings, right? Like heart was racing, wanted to run away, felt like my voice was shaking, completely forgot all my slides the moment I started. And I remember feeling like I just want to get it over with. And I felt like I have to do this. Like it came from an integrity place. That's where I find a lot of my courage. This is the thing that I must do. I am the person that knows my product the best, and therefore I have to stand up and represent the brand and right? It was more about integrity versus years later, after my husband had passed, because he was one of the very early losses of COVID. He was young, healthy. He had a young child at home. We hadn't even locked down yet when he started first symptoms. So it got a lot of media attention for that reason. And also for the group that was forming of other young widows online, I remember just feeling like our daughter has to know that he was important. She has to know his story, the way he carried himself through life with joy at the center and always pursuing the best of who he was. Like, he also had a passion for computers, also
Mm.
self-taught, started to go back to school so that he can grow. But his very first big expense was his first computer, right? It was
Mhm.
his passion. And yeah, coming from the immigrant story, had to really build and do everything on his own, experience a lot of hardship, but always going through it with joy. And I felt that was so important to share. Right. And so it was different from like, I have to do this because it's my job and I'm the one that has the answers that need to be delivered during the presentation. It was like more procedural, objective kind of thing, where this was more like I was passionate about the message that I wanted the world to know. And I knew that I was the person that was going to deliver it because I knew him the best. I was closest to
Mhm.
him. And it was most important to me that my daughter was able to feel that his life was honored and valued and it was important. So it was just two different purposes. And that's, I feel like purpose is such a big motivator for courage. When you have that purpose, you will move through things that you wouldn't otherwise.
Mhm.
And I remember leading up to it, it was very similar type of experience, but heightened because it meant so much to me that,
Mhm.
my hands were shaking, my voice was cracking. I was getting ready to be on live. But that part also was much more high pressure on national television. I did a few of these. I think the most high pressure one was I had to deliver it in Spanish in
Oh.
the interview and it was live. That one was probably the highest pressure. But I remember I showed up, people messaged me like, you did such a great job. Da, da, da. I felt that support, but realizing that none of the people that thought I was well spoken and did such a great job and looked so calm and put together saw that after I gave that interview, I was crying and shaking and
Mhm.
really trying to regulate my nervous system, right?
Yeah.
After the fact, because it was so much stress or pressure that I put on myself because I was such an introvert and this was triggering my nervous system, like not safe, not safe. Right?
Yeah.
That moment for me changed a lot because I realized, wait a minute, all these people that we see doing these really hard things, we're not seeing what happened before, what happened after, how hard it was. We're only seeing the product. And it looks so easy. I heard things like that. You did it so naturally. It looks so easy for
Mhm.
you. I've heard people talk about this a lot, actually, kind of in this space where they say people think it looks so easy, but you don't see what happens before, what happens after. But it was different when somebody said it to me because I was like, yeah, I know you look so great there. I don't think you looked. But it's always
Right.
like we're our own worst critic. And when people said it to me, I realized, oh, yeah, people don't see what we feel. That was kind of like reframing for me as an introvert. I loved salsa dancing. It was the one thing that got me through a lot of grief. To practice salsa dance, it's a partner dance. So you have
Mhm.
to go to social events to dance it. I had to force myself. The purpose was I know that when I go there, I feel joy and I love this dance and I'm able to kind of disconnect. And it really did help my nervous system. Dance is great for the nervous system. And so it's like focusing on the why. And if it's the listeners that have read or heard Simon Sinek starts with why, I think that applies, in our regular lives. When you go to the salsa socials, even though you feel like you're going to cry and run away and you're sweating and all of this,
Mhm.
I think that your transition from Walmart, which we think about Walmart, it's such a huge retailer. They must have the ability to invest so much in their employees. And then you talk about Apple and how innovative they are. I wanted to talk a little bit about how those cultures impacted you because I know you left Walmart kind of
Hmm.
burnt out. What was great about the cultures at these different organizations? What was different about them? One being a retailer, another one being more software tech oriented. What was it that stood out to you in that space?
Okay, I'll start with Walmart, and I'll just go through how I experienced my career. Walmart's guiding principle is everyday low prices. And
Right.
so the first day of orientation, you go into a giant conference room with the other 50 people that got hired and they're onboarding for that week and get your account set up or whatnot. And then you go meet your manager, and your manager has a trash bucket that's empty, or it has garbage bag in it, one pad of paper, one pen, a dry eraser marker, and a dry eraser. And they're like, here's all your supplies. If you need more, bring some from home. So it's very austere. The culture of trying to cut costs to really save for the end customer was part of the DNA of the place. And so it's kind of shocking. You're like, did all this training, I did all this schooling, and now it's like we're doing bare bones kind of bootstrapping culture. That was the first day experience there. What I loved about Walmart is they were really people focused for as much as they leaned on folks. There's always twice the amount of work than we had people to do. And it was always this arbitrage of what's the most important thing, what's on fire today that we need to solve, and like a really intense like work environment, working at least 50 hours a week, oftentimes more. And then also being a part of a tech organization. And this is like for any organization, you want to work where the divisions make the money because they're the folks treated the best. Not that we were mistreated,
Right.
but we were not the buyers who were buying merchandise and selling it and actually generating bottom line. We were cost savers in a lot of ways.
You were in an environment that would trigger your nervous system to be in a
Oh,
survival state.
oh yeah. And on the imposter syndrome.
Fires, 50 plus hours a week. So you're not rested. You're feeling imposter syndrome. People are telling you that you have to get by with the minimal amount of resources. Like all of that is survival state
Mhm.
culture.
Yeah, it was very austere. They did invest in training. One of the things I loved about Walmart is they would throw you into any situation. Didn't matter your experience level. This time you're going to be a project manager for the next month, but your official job is software engineer. It felt more like a startup. As a first job, it really helped me believe in my ability to shift quickly, to prioritize, to go into uncomfortable situations. I came in as a Java programmer, my most proficient language. I learned how to do 4 other languages like COBOL, JavaScript, some like C++ stuff, some proprietary stuff. And as far as a software education, you start to see there's common things between this.
Mhm.
And so when I got hired for Apple, I didn't know how to do Python. There was a Python team that I was working on. I had a week before the interview to get geared up for it. That experience at Walmart where I've done this before. How do I do these logic statements? How do I debug? In a week, I was good enough with the previous experience and confidence to figure it out, to be like, okay, I got this no problem. And like, was able to get through and navigate interview process. And just being like, hey, I don't know this because I'm not familiar with this, but here's how I do it in another language, or here's the pseudo logic behind it. And like, okay, you get the stuff, and then the language part you'll figure out. So Waller is really great for that, as intense as it was. And you contrast that now with Apple. On the first day of Apple, you go into the big like auditorium where Steve Jobs did the iPod launch, which is really cool, and they dress that. And the first slide you see is, we hired you because you're smart and you belong here. And we want you to tell us what to do because that's why we hired you. And so that was a completely different shift. Like Walmart's going into the building in the information systems division, they had a saying of everyday people doing extraordinary things, right? Which is kind of inspiring and like it fit and it was great. But the way that you were also kind of micromanaged a lot of the time is like, hey, you have to be at your desk and man it, whether you have work or not. It was very, I don't trust you. And it's the
Mhm.
complete opposite in Apple of like, we trust you, just, deliver on what you say, on the timelines. How you do it, we don't really care. There's certain things we care about, don't go into a non-secure spot and load up the new version of the OS because it'll get leaked, like stuff like that. But the energy of we respect you, you're an adult, we want you to do your best work here. Our job is to enable that and get out of the way most as we can. And it was very much a contrast. Interestingly, both Steve Jobs and Sam Walton studied with one of the Hewlett Packard guys for
Mm.
management style. They both had that in common. So some of the walking around and managing people type stuff, there's certain weird parallels, but implemented in completely different ways, which is really
Yeah.
fascinating.
Yeah. I think leadership and influence is super fascinating. One of the things that I heard you talk about, and I wrote it down before you even said it, is
Mhm,
how trust creates a sense of safety, which
mhm,
will innately help you regulate your nervous system in difficult situations.
mhm,
And also, you talked about how even though you had imposter syndrome, you ultimately learned that you could figure it out by being thrown into unknown territory. You built that confidence, which later served you very much at Apple, because it really isn't about avoiding having a dysregulated nervous system. It's
right.
really that awareness that, oh, this feels not safe because it's unknown, it's new, it's different, and my nervous system is just trying to keep me safe.
Mhm,
And then moving through that and regulating. I think the challenge in startup type of conditions, and not all of them, I think if you have this awareness and you understand how people that remain in this sprint and rest, and give you the opportunity to re-regulate your nervous system,
mhm,
you can still do that really well. But if you're constantly in that survival state of like, not safe, and no rest and no ability to recover from those sprints, you create a situation where your prefrontal cortex is always offline
mhm,
and you're just like trying to do the things that will keep you alive, right? The whole
mhm,
I'm not going to die thing. And
mhm.
when you're doing that, you're not being innovative, creative. You're not in a space that you can be curious or explore or learn. I think sometimes when we are trying to create a space where we're go getter and always pushing ourselves further without paying attention to, oh, like, I'm now not just dysregulated, now I'm, like, in freeze state.
Yeah.
We get in our own way as high performers in high performing organizations where we wanna push our people to be their best. Sometimes we end up doing the opposite, right?
Mhm. Yeah, and at Walmart in particular, it manifested in a strict adherence to arbitrary process, meaning I need a security change on a system. It is a 2-second command line. Like you type
Mhm.
it and you're good, right? But if you have so much volume and you're in that fight or flight and,
Mm.
you're like, it's going to throw me off for the main project I'm supposed to do because I have to do this one thing that distracts me and I can't group the distractions to handle it all at once. It completely messes with your day if I get interrupted at 9 o'clock in the morning to do this simple request. And so you have to do a 2-week waiting process so we can plan the work and you have to do all this paperwork and it hurts the organization when everyone's at the edge of their wits, you know,
Mm.
because you're so focused on how do I manage my day-to-day life in a way that I feel like I have some control or feel like I can manage it and make progress on things. It's insane to always feel like no matter how much I do, the work double exponentially.
Right.
And so you get crushed by that. And so it's creating problems for a high performing team if everyone is in that kind of maxed out mode.
Yeah, and that whole concept of always feeling like you're dropping the big thing to do a small thing. I
Mhm.
definitely remember as a product manager where you're sitting at your desk trying to get through a big product requirements document or a PowerPoint presentation that you're going to present a new feature, whatever, to the big team. This is like a heads down, have to focus, need to know what storyline I'm going to tell. I'll get an urgent email from a client. The client responsibilities never got off my plate. Now I have somebody at my door with a quick question.
Yep.
And then it's like all those little things that if I had been better at setting boundaries around my time, around like not being yes right away, and knowing that if I was going to work on this and do it well, and it was taking me 3 to 4 times as long because every time there was a distraction, I had to like stop, do this other thing, come back. There was so many times I had like 5 different new emails started. Right? And
Mhm.
now it was taking me twice as long to try to now finish all the loose ends at the end of the night, which meant it's 5:30 and now I have to wrap up all these loose ends and get out of the office at 7 o'clock. Right?
Yeah.
And I never finished that presentation, by the way, you know?
Yes.
And the development team face very similar things where, they would try to get big projects done. Like they had a big complex problem to solve. They had to introduce new functionality into an existing product. You think about, I have to add new variables. I have to understand where in the loops I have to insert this line of code. How am I going to handle the logic about, when we don't have the information that we need, like qualifying data? There's so many aspects of this process that these people have to think through before they ever start sitting down to write the code. And then when they're writing it, if you don't think about all the ways that the data is dependent on each other, it's just complex stuff, right? The person that drops by and that person might be like the salesperson or the owner that talked to a
Yep.
new potential client. And now they have to consider this new potential project that might come their way
Mhm.
inside of this other problem they're already trying to solve, right?
Mhm.
Also, like the changing, right? The changing of the timelines, the time frames. Like,
Yeah.
oh, by the way, this was going to be done in 3 weeks, but now you've added 4 more things. And by the way, this other client wants this other thing that will impact all of these things.
Yep. Yep. Yep.
It's like if you haven't developed the skill of setting boundaries and being able to communicate those boundaries, like, hey, I'm not going to work every night and every weekend to get this done. And it's going to take this long to get it done only if I'm able to assign these blocks of time without distraction. And I remember for me to set those boundaries would set my nervous system on fire. At the time, I didn't have that kind of awareness, but would be like, oh, I need to please people. I don't do this. I'm a bad worker, shame, guilt, all the things,
Mhm.
right? I need to make sure that everyone's happy with me because I'll get fired. It's like
Mhm.
nobody was saying these things to me, but in my nervous system, that was being triggered. Honestly, your nervous system feels all the sensations of what's going on around you. So there were probably things that signaled those things to me, right? Like the micromanaging, the way that they would watch people and then bring them up in meetings, or the way that the late nights were being applauded, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
Piggybacking off the trust aspect of saying the long hours, how would you say you would go back and do things differently to not get burnt out?
I think when I went to Apple, there's a part of me that had that shame and guilt and people pleasing that was just burnt out. And quite honestly, I came in more with an attitude of like, no, I'm going to hold boundaries and like I don't work past certain times. I have a 2 hour commute, 1 hour each way each day, at least, unless it was bad. So there was some structure and some reasons that I'm going to stick to. And I'm going to bring in energy of don't mess with this because this is what's happening. And out of like, hey, can I maybe like go on the bus, take one of those tech buses in the Bay Area where you could like work on the bus. But I'm going to leave at 3 o'clock and get to the bus at 5 o'clock. So it's 2 hours of work, sitting on a secure bus. So part of that, I think, changed where it's just, I'm like, okay, I like my family. I like my wife. I like being able to play music, run and stuff. Those are important. I work to live and I don't live to work, you know? And not to say that I'm not going to go heavy when the project demands that you're at work for longer. It's good as an exception, not as the rule. I'm very
Mhm.
sensitive to that. Going back to, I'm glad you asked that question because what I did at Apple or tried to do at Apple was more successful because the company is a little bit more supportive culturally. Is I call them meeting days and project days. And so I try to schedule all of my meetings because with managers or communication, it's always a magic 1 hour meeting and it's very defined. So to try to get those all on a Monday or a Friday when you're trying to warm up to the week and you're trying to get ready for next week in the weekend. So I try to push meetings on that. And then it would be half day blocks for project time in the morning or day. And I think Alex Hermosi calls it management time, creative time or something. So I felt good because I was doing that before he did a video about that. Really effective to think about how you structure your time. And if you're a manager, how are you structuring your team's time or how are you honoring your team's time?
Yeah.
Because as a manager, you live almost exclusively in meetings time. Maybe you have a project of your own where you need it, but your employees don't. And it's super disruptive. I mean, what's the psychology study that it takes 15 minutes after an
Mhm.
interruption to get back to where you were before you can start to get back into it? So at Walmart, I'd have like a continuous stream of people needing stuff from me, not related to my project. It's just like, hey, the server is busted. Can you be the hardware infrastructure manager and engineer and fix it? We're losing money. So I would think of it that way. And then I take a spicy take on setting boundaries. Isn't really about setting boundaries. It's about having agency and taking control of your career. For me, every time I was like, yes, I'll do this, especially early on in my career, in a way, it was absolving me of the responsibility of I'm not getting my project work done because I said yes to trying to help all these other people. The mindset shift at Apple then of like, this is my time, here's how I'm doing things, and I'd be really strict on it, was me asserting this is how I want to experience work. And these are my requirements, and people can shift around. Like, I'm not doing lunch meetings anymore. That is blocked out for me to go outside and, grab a salad and be happy. So that's a long-winded way to say how I would handle going back. But I love coaching so much, I wouldn't go back. But take agency of your career. Don't be reactive. That sounds really harsh, but I think with burnout in particular, having coached creators through this a lot, everyone has a moment where they've made a choice or a couple of choices that led to burnout, but they hardly ever take the responsibility for it. So it's always very interesting and tough to navigate when you're like, hey, like you're miserable because you're spending all this extra time after hours at your work because you feel you need to. Like, why did you choose that? And you're like, I didn't choose it. It's the company, it's the customers, it's all these other people. And I've been there too. So it's not like,
Yeah.
but it's like, no, you made that choice. Like,
Yeah.
you could choose a different way.
Well, because people sometimes think boundaries is about trying to get the other person to do what you want them to do. Like, don't ask me anymore to work late. Don't ask me anymore to have a meeting during lunchtime. And it isn't about trying to control the other person. It's recognizing that we can't control the other person and we can only
Mhm.
control ourselves. So it's more about what I will do and not telling you what not to do, but knowing what I need to do in order to continue to show up in the best
Mhm.
way that I can.
Yeah.
Because at the end of the day, you're not doing anybody any favors by showing up as the lesser version of you because you're burned out, annoyed, or tired,
Hmm.
or not fulfilled. And this applies in relationships in general. It applies with your children, your partner, your friend. Like, in order for me to show up as my best to this relationship at work, in my personal, whatever, this is how I'm going to behave. So it's not, don't ask me for lunch meetings. It's when you ask me for a lunch meeting, I will not accept it or move it to a
Mm.
different time or whatever.
Yeah.
Because otherwise you are, like you said, choosing to
Hmm.
not honor what you say your values are. Cause that's the other thing is like, how do we set boundaries are honoring our values. Like you said,
Hmm.
I love my family. Like, okay, does your time show that? Your calendar show that? Have a passion for music, whatever it is that you value. Are you honoring that with your time, with your boundaries? I wish my boss wouldn't yell at me, or I wish my boss wouldn't keep assigning these accounts to me. It's like, no, it's if you raise your voice, I will walk out of the room. If you
Yeah.
assign these accounts, I am not,
Mhm.
going to, take on that thing. And the thing is, there is a real fear because people are afraid. I know I've been there too. People are afraid because it's their life.
Mhm.
And people are afraid of getting dismissed, fired, whatever. And I think that's when you saying like taking agency and control of your career is important because it comes with I've developed the skills that I know I need to be highly valuable in this role or the role that I aim to have. Right. And so if I'm highly valuable, if I chose to work on the high value projects, not said yes to all the demands on me, then I know that I am highly valuable and therefore I will figure it out. I will either be valued here or I will be valued somewhere else that is going
Yeah.
to be more aligned with who I want to be. I think one of the things that comes up for me is every time that we act not in alignment and we abandon ourselves a little bit more,
Yeah.
right? It continues to eat away at our confidence.
Hmm.
Mhm.
Definitely. Definitely. A lot of what high performance coaching is living with this aligned purpose, confidence, presence, joy, all working together. Um, Another thing on boundaries is that most people think a boundary is like a line between something, but it's
Mm.
really two forces pushing up against each other. So it's like the beach, right? There's clear boundaries between the ocean and the sky and the earth and the ocean. And that proactive action in keeping boundaries is you not giving way to the water. It's that clear, my values are here. So when you schedule a lunch thing, I'm going to decline it out of principle because that's protected time. We'll manage it otherwise. And maybe there's a little bit of arrogance, maybe because I'm a guy, but it's like, if you really need me in the meeting, we'll find a different time for it, type of attitude.
Yeah, we, I think, make stories in our minds about
Mhm.
what's really an emergency. It also plays into this survival mode culture. If you're in that state all the time, everything feels like an emergency. And it's about being
Mhm.
the grounded person, just like any time our nervous system is running on fumes. It's like, okay, what if that happened? What then? Right? It's
Yeah.
usually not as critical as we think it's going to be. Even if you
Mhm.
say, well, what if they find me for saying no to working on the weekend? It's like, okay, what if? What,
Yeah.
what if I'd be looking for another job? Okay. Then
Yeah.
what? Like, would that be so bad actually? Sometime.
I think of it as someone that values how people treat others in a relationship. And a lot of times with work and culture, you're in a relationship with an organization and your team. And we don't talk enough about how abusive sometimes that relationship can be. Someone that constantly wants you to only think, breathe, live your job. and not experience the other parts of being a human, that's to me a definition of an abusive relationship. And like,
Right.
if you were sitting with a friend, like my significant other doesn't want me to leave the house, like I always have to be working on the house or doing all these tasks, and I don't get to see my friends, I don't get to work out, I miss lunch all the time, I sometimes don't have time for dinner, I don't have time to get like on and on and on and on. Like you'd be like, hey, like, is this the healthiest person for you? Like, I know maybe you love the job, you identify with it, and like you're committed to that, and that's admirable. And you're gonna break, or something's gonna break. So, what's really important here? And I feel like having been in corporate America, it could be a bad manager that does this, it could be a bad teammate that does this, it could be a bad company standard operating procedures kind of a thing. But in high performance, we talk about the life you want to live. Like, I want to be vibrant. I want to be happy. I want to feel confident and valued in all my relationships with work and with my wife and friends and family. I think everyone really does crave that. And it's very evident. Sometimes it's not evident when you're the person in it, but like all your friends and family, people around you be like, this is not healthy for you. And so,
Yeah.
how do we approach life in a way where we're thinking about, is this good and healthy for me? I mean, sometimes you got to do something because it's the means to an end. Like, I need to feed the kids. Like, that's an admirable purpose and could be very aligned. But if you could provide for the kids and be happy at the same time, that's a no-brainer choice.
Right. And I love that you brought it up. Like, if someone was in that kind of a relationship, because I didn't know that that's what was
Yeah.
happening at the time.
Yeah.
Some of our work struggles are really highlighted even in our romantic relationships. Like, there's so many parallels, and you can get so much insight about what's going on for a person if you see those patterns, because the relationships we have with our career are very similar to the same challenges we face in our relationships with our romantic partners. This anxious attachment behavior that I was displaying, always wanting to do everything because I was afraid of being left. Later, when I had to be in the dating pool, I realized these are the same limiting beliefs I experienced in my corporate life that kept me stuck in these patterns are now really manifesting in like dating. And it's just like mind blowing. And along with that is when you start dating, it's like you want to start from a place of knowing what is important to me in a partner. What are the shared values that I want to have with this person? And so I think if we started to look at job searching and our careers the same way we think about dating, it's like, oh, I'm not going to be for everyone, just like I don't want to date just anyone. And so when I'm interviewing or when I'm looking for my next role or when I'm in a role, I want to keep in mind the fact that it's okay that I'm not for everyone and everyone's going to be for me. And so when these challenges start coming up, when our values are conflicting with one another and I'm starting to feel like I may get rejected, it's like, oh, right, it'll work out. This might not be the right fit for me. And so I think it's so important that we start to gain the awareness of our patterns. Like you said, it's important for everyone. And so as managers, when we know what's important to our employees and our team members in general, we can then also better influence them in their roles. I think influence is also such a powerful skill to develop so that not only do you take care of yourself, but you can also create an environment where your team is motivated and feels excited to come to work and excited to work on their projects. I wanted to know, what are your thoughts on influence? I know it's one of the high performance habits. When have you seen it done really well? And culture is a big part of that, right? And when have you seen it not done well?
Yeah, it's a great question. So I went to business school. I took an organizational behavior course, which really served me as a software engineer, just understanding people dynamics and team dynamics. And like one of the questions, if you're a professional, work in a team, there's two types of authority, right? There's the formal authority of your manager, and then there's the soft influencers on every team. And once I learned this idea, it's one of those things where the reality breaks and you see it all the time now of like, who's exerting formal authority, who's doing soft authority. Soft authority being like going back to the example of, hey, I need the security thing. Like going through the process will take me a month and it's not doing it. But knowing your buddy on the team and being like, hey, I know you like Snicker bars. Here's a Snicker bar. Could you just handle this? Kind of like greasing the wheel a little bit. Maybe that's not a great example, but like having that personal relationship to know their interests, to know that there's some camaraderie or like, hey, we took a class together. Remember? Oh yeah. How's it going? How are the kids? Hey,
You're
I did
just
the
having
same.
connection, right? Like connection over authoritative leadership.
Yeah. And I think all great leaders with authority lean on soft power and not position, because influence is a long-term game. And it's like, I'm very quiet, introverted. I'm also very punk rock. If you force me to do something or go out of your way to diminish me in the work, and I've had experiences because people think, hey, I have a little bit of weight to throw around. I'm not going to make it any easier for you. You're going to go through the month process no matter what now because you're a jerk.
No one's going to do you any favors just because
Yeah.
you're a bully.
I had a manager at Apple who was a great guy, very French, had a very poor relationship with all the admins. And if you ever are in an organization, the number one friend, you should be trying to cultivate a relationship with those admins because they make the world go. And so it got to the point where anytime the team needed a new computer or something that the admins would help you work, the manager would come to me and be like, hey, could you go and ask for a computer because we need it for so-and-so, and they won't talk to me, That's like just being nice to people. It really, you say, hey, how's it going? Again, it's the soft skills of being curious. There's this thing that I saw on social media recently where a psychologist was talking about all of the popular people in high schools across all socioeconomic and things. And like the one thing they had in common wasn't that they were liked, it's that they had the longest list of what they liked in other people. And so every interaction is like, I really like, Diana, that you have this awesome podcast. You have really good energy, a really like sense and head about you, and a very unique perspective coming from sociology. I really like that about you. Just looking for that so you can acknowledge it. And we talk about this in high performance a bit and acknowledging people, but that gets you more connection. So that if I'm like, hey, Diana, I have this launch that I'm doing and I'd really like you to support it, you're going to be like, hey, this is the guy that likes me and I like him too.
It's going back to the aspect of what are our innate human needs. Our innate human needs are to feel seen, to be heard, to be understood, right? And so when we meet that need for people, they're going to be more collaborative because you've shown them that you see them, that you acknowledge them. They feel that connection and safety with you. And that's going to make people listen to you because they feel that you understand where they're coming from. Therefore, maybe you have something really valuable or important to share with me that I might be more willing to listen to, as opposed to someone that's just telling you. Your instant reaction is going to be like, you know nothing about me. Right?
Yeah.
You don't understand. You don't see everything that I do. And as a product manager, I think that took me pretty far. This was before I did any of the coaching stuff, but I had people that really said to me, I'll follow you wherever you go. If you ever are looking for someone to do this kind of work, I think they felt like I took the time to hear them, to understand their experience, to get curious about the work that they do and what are the challenges that they're having. And I think when you do that and ask for feedback, like you're listening, people are more likely to be collaborative. They're more likely
Hmm.
to be influenced by you. It goes back to what you said too. Everybody needs these things, and it is hard to have that awareness when you're in a technical role or,
Hmm.
you're just doing the things versus when now you have to lead people. But also in these organizations that don't necessarily acknowledge that that's a valuable skill, then the culture also doesn't reflect that. And sometimes I do believe that in any culture, we can set our own culture in our teams and be a better leader and grow in these ways, like gaining awareness and acknowledgement of what makes great leaders and influences people to do their best work. There are also times that you run up against where the organizational culture does limit you in some ways. Do you have examples of that in your background?
Yeah, I think so. There's always this tension of be the change you want to be in the world
Mm,
versus cutting your losses because it's not going to change, right? So
mm,
you've hit a mountain and that mountain is not going to move for you. And so for me, it always came down to how can I do the best given the situation, put forth the best person and aspiration I wanted for an organization, do the thing where you try to find what you like about people. And I really think we've lost this as a culture in the US. The political divide is, I think, very simply, we stopped liking people based on a particular ideology.
yeah.
And if we could find that again, I think that would be a step in healing and bringing people together and moving forward. But Walmart, I feel like I was fighting an uphill battle with how they viewed work versus how I viewed work. Like I said, they were really good at managing people because they had to, because it was so stressful everywhere else. So the choice to leave, I was asked this question at a high performance academy with Brendan: are you living your truth? And I wasn't, because I was so plugged into Walmart. And I left, I was there for 5 years. 10 years after, I would have recurring dreams of working on my last project there. Like, oh, I solved this thing that doesn't matter anymore. Like, why is my subconscious still noodling on it? I think it was because of the extreme focus and lack of release consistently. Like, that 5 years is like one chunk of time, pretty much. So, the decision, am I living my truth? No, I'm not. Can I live my truth at Walmart? At that point, I thought I had explored all the options and added as much value as I could have in trying to be the standout to what the culture was. I think there's a lot of opportunity if you're in a company culture that is very top down or not people focused, that you'll stand out being the people person that advocates and fights for other people. And I actually think that's leadership, is to be that
Mhm.
advocate for your teammates and the people on your team. I don't see where you could go wrong that way. Do as much as you can. Make sure that you're actually up against a mountain. It's not that you're frustrated that this one team is bad for you. Both Walmart and Apple, I had teams that were really great, and I had teams where, okay, maybe the manager isn't the most tuned in. Leaving Apple, the culture, I think, was a really good fit. Do I follow my passion and take another bet on myself? Which I'm very glad that I did. It was a really great choice for me. But that was a 2.5 year agonizing, like, this is really good. I could do both for forever and probably still be happy. But I just wanted to focus on the one thing. And then the culture actually was, if I'm not giving my 100% at this job, I'm doing the job a disservice. If I love this
Yeah.
other thing and I'm not honoring the current thing, that's why I need to move on. I want to do a great job. I could still be that sense of light or that people person there, but it just didn't fit the culture in the way that I felt I wanted to live up to their expectation.
That really resonated with me too, because one of the things that I started noticing in myself was I was starting to tune out and check out and like
Mhm.
just, forget it. Kind of a like apathy. I felt like I had already done everything I could. The same things were happening. And then I started to feel like, well, I don't want to be that. apathetic person and I don't feel like I'm engaged anymore. I walked into my late husband's office and I was like, I can't do this anymore
Mm,
in tears. When he said, well, you don't have to, it was that empathy that I was
yeah.
unwilling to extend to myself that allowed me the freedom to say, you know what, it's time to go. And I think one of the things that I wish I could have said to myself is like, all those times that you work late into the night and the things that seem really urgent, it's like the work will be there tomorrow anyway. When I lost Vaughn, I did look back on those years, and if I had known that those were all the years I was going to get, I was definitely assigning the hours to the wrong things. I was only going to get the chance to live those moments at that time. And I saw so many people retire and leave. And we thought, how are we ever going to run this business without them? And the business just continues, right? Like the work is
Yeah.
always going to be there. The business is always going to figure it out. The passions that you didn't pursue, the relationships that you didn't give your time to, those things are fleeting. I didn't go to the dance class because I was at the office till 7 p.m. Like those parts of
Hmm.
yourself that you lose, you never get back. And the business emails that I didn't write, I don't even remember them now. It is like that for me, realizing those things aren't as critical as life or death as actual people that are with you. You will one day lose them, you will
Hmm.
regret this time. You will lose your youth. You will lose
Hmm.
these years, right? And I love that you said that you had someone that advocated for you and that you learned to advocate for others. And it's like you said, seeing people. And I think when you set the culture of like, we cut costs, all you're looking for is how else do we cut costs? Like,
Yeah.
how do we get them to work more hours? How do we get more projects on people's plates? When that becomes the culture, you no longer value the people, you value the costs. When you're talking about looking for people's greatness and you start on the foot of, we hired you because we think you're brilliant, it's like, okay, how can I see this person's greatness? Will get you so much further. Like you said, now we start to judge someone based on their, political party or their opinion on something. And it's like everyone has innate value and you will find everyone's unique greatness, beauty, gifted area, the thing that lights them up or the thing that they're super good at. If you are focused on the positive thing, you are more likely to put your brain into that mode of like creativity and efficiency and all the things. And you set that culture by highlighting the greatness, by highlighting the good, not by how do we cut costs all the time, what's going wrong this week or what competitor is going to take our business. To have that awareness that you decide where you set everyone's focus as a leader and as an organization, if you're in HR or setting culture, that does make such a difference in the motivation, the creativity, innovation, the willingness to make mistakes. I think that's so important too, is those micromanagers, that's what they're afraid of. They're afraid of mistakes. Honestly, like I was in a team where I didn't realize that I was micromanaged. And then I learned that style and then I micromanage. And it's because of that fear of what if, you say the wrong thing, do the wrong thing, you don't get the results that you want. It's because you have a focus on everything that's going wrong as opposed to what went right and building on that. I think when you talk about realizing things are no longer in alignment, sometimes it's the focus on all the things that could go wrong as opposed to all the things that were going to go right. This is what I'm passionate about. This is so wonderful. The opportunity on the other side of that sounds like it drove you to make a somewhat difficult decision, right?
Yeah, definitely. But ultimately, like every decision, even like choosing cultures that were burnt out, like focused, maybe all led to this moment. And like bring it all back
Yes.
to Apple. Like Steve Jobs has a really beautiful commencement speech at Stanford. I think it was shortly before he passed, where he talked about connecting the dots looking backwards. He dropped into a calligraphy class he wasn't even signed up for after he dropped out of college and learned about fonts. And then in the 80s, Apple's defining competitive advantage was all the fonts. Like, we don't think about like everything has like a font picker now, but like it
Mm.
was revolutionary. It drove a lot of market value for Apple. I was interested in this and I was able to bring it into something completely different in the future. That connection looking backwards is a no duh, but if you're taking that calligraphy class now, you have no idea what you're going to use it for. That music class, that art class, that business, you don't know where it's going to lead you. But we only find out by doing and by experiencing it and then feeling okay to make adjustments and giving ourselves permission to make adjustments
Mm.
as we move forward.
I love that we're closing on that because it's what I say all the time. Everything happens for a reason.
Mm.
It's never like, oh, all of this is going to go to waste. No, you'll see why all of this is bringing you exactly where you were meant to be. It's not the reason to not take the leap into the unknown. It's like actually was supposed to happen. And it's nothing ever goes to waste, right? Looking back, you will see how it all served you in different ways. And it is that aspect of culture that is embracing diversity too because
Mhm.
every time we make this judgment just because somebody has a different like idea or interest or whatever and we want to micromanage it to be exactly what we think it needs to be, you're closing the door to more innovation. I worked somewhere where they would say if somebody has a side hustle or a side job or passion project, whatever, we can't bring them on. We want them to live, breathe, and live this company. I can see how they're trying to set a culture, but it's like if you take away all the things that make someone who they are, it's like
Mhm.
you are also taking away what makes them so great at their work, like all the things that light them up and these different perspectives or interests will actually make your product better for it. What if
Mhm.
Steve Jobs didn't have a unique, gift or interest in calligraphy? Apple would have never came to be what it was. And yet if they had that parent or advisor that was like, this has nothing to do with what you want to do and code all the time or be heads down in this thing, it didn't invite other perspectives, other ideas, other
Mhm.
innovations. And for the person that is trying to make those difficult decisions about, do I change careers? Do I go for that promotion? It is like leaning on the trust that it's all going to work out and it's all happening for a reason and you're exactly where you're meant to be.
Definitely. I have another story for you real quick. And this is actually like not my story, but do you remember in the 2000s where Apple had those clear cases with the bright color, like iMacs and stuff,
Okay.
pink and the blues and the whatever? It's talking about having different perspectives, right? So Apple manufactures hardware, writes software. They got the idea for the design of the actual cases of the computers by going to a candy factory and seeing how they made hard shell candy. And were able to bring that manufacturing process to plastic to make this new iconic looking thing. People on your teams, the people in your organizations might have gone to the candy factory or the bread factory or something. Maybe someone's into marine biology and studied whales and you're working on something related to sound. And then that's a connection that diversity breeds innovation is a law that I believe in. I've seen it time and time again at Apple, studying companies that are very innovative. So you never know.
Absolutely. You can find inspiration in the wildest places, but only if you're in a state where you can allow your mind to wander, be curious, and explore. That's why we take care of ourselves and why we take care of our people is to allow for the environment where that's made possible. And so I'm loving that we're having this conversation And I can't wait to be on your podcast as well. I am so grateful for the opportunity to have your perspective in this. And I want to share with our audience if they want to connect with you more and see what you're up to and how your journey has progressed. What are some ways that they can connect with you further?
Thanks. So you can go to my website, ShawnButner.com, SHAWN, Sean. I'm sure it'll be in the show notes. I have a YouTube channel for the Creators That Crush podcast. It's just Sean Butner on YouTube, also on LinkedIn. That's where I probably post the most. So say hi there. If you really want to help me out, I'm at 99 subscribers on YouTube. If you want to be the 100th person, that would really help me out. Hopefully you like the show. Check me out on YouTube, my website, or LinkedIn, and let me know how I can help.
I love it. Thanks so much, Sean. I really
Thanks so
appreciate
much.
it. And for anyone who's thinking about content creation as a potential next leap, I think Sean is a great person to have on your team. Thanks, Sean. Until next
Thanks,
time.
yeah. Yep.
Thank you for tuning into today's episode of Courage and Purpose. I hope today's insights inspired you to take bold action and align your life and career with what truly matters to you. If you're ready to dive deeper, I invite you to download my free Action Indicator Assessment, a powerful tool to help you uncover what's holding you back and take the next step towards clarity and confidence. Just visit www.lifeonpurpose.coach/action indicator to get started today. If you found value in today's episode, please subscribe, leave a review, and share this podcast with someone who could use a little extra courage on their journey. Until next time, stay true to your purpose, lead with courage, and keep thriving. I'll see you in the next episode.